The masked stranger, the twin moons of Zareth, hovered in the night sky, casting a soft blue glow over the crystal palace. Inside the great halls, music echoed and lights danced across the walls like stardust. It was the masquerade of binding held once every 10 years, where no names were spoken and all faces were hidden behind silver masks. Only the elite were invited, and no outsiders had ever dared to attend. But tonight a human was among them. His name was Kale, a soldier and scout who had slipped through the outer defenses with stolen codes and a plan that wasn't fully formed. He wore the ceremonial robe of a lesser noble in a shining mask he had taken from a fallen alien officer. No one stopped him because no one could see what was beneath the mask. Kale didn't expect to stay long. He was supposed to gather intel, maybe plan a bug and disappear before midnight, but then he saw her. She stood beneath a floating lantern tree, her gown made of living silk that shimmered like water. Her name was Saria, and she had worn the mask not for tradition but to hide her pain in her world. She was known as the last born of a once powerful bloodline. She was graceful and strong, but inside she carried a curse no healer could fix. She was infertile, and that meant her lineage would end with her. When her golden eyes met Kale's through the thin slits of their masks, something sparked between them. Neither spoke right away. Words felt too heavy, too real, and the music made silence feel comfortable. They danced slowly at first, then faster, drawn to each other by something they didn't understand. In that moment, their worlds didn't matter. He was human, she was alien, but under the masks they were just too lonely souls. Kale felt her hand tremble. His, and Saria felt warmth she hadn't known in years. The ballroom faded behind them as they slipped away through the garden path. They found a quiet chamber hidden behind flowering vines and glowing stones. They're surrounded by silence and scent. They let the masks fall. For the first time they saw each other without barriers, without names. Sir touched his face like it was forbidden but precious, and Kale held her like she was something fragile and powerful at once. No words were spoken that night, only breath and warmth, and something far deeper than either expected. They became one in that quiet chamber with no future promised and no past to answer for. When dawn began to paint the sky with violet light, Kale was gone. He left before she could ask his name, before the world could take notice. Saria returned to the palace with her mask on, but something inside her had changed. The music felt distant, the colors dull, and her steps carried weight she couldn't explain. She told no one had happened. She told herself it was a dream, secret she would keep until the day she faded. But just 3 nights later her body began to burn. Her skin glowed faintly and her heart raced without reason. At first the healers thought she had caught a fever. Then came the scans, the blood tests, the whispering behind her back. A council of elders gathered in silence as her results were shown on the screen. Saria sat in the center of the chamber, her hands clenched tight in her lap. She already knew what they were about to say. The head medic's voice trembled as he spoke. "You are with child." The chamber went still like the breath of the whole city had been stolen. One elder whispered, "That's not possible. Her kind cannot bear children." Another demanded, "Who is the father?" Saria said nothing, her mask resting in her lap, but her golden eyes were calm. She stood and left without a word. Outside, the world was already changing. The moon seemed brighter, the stars closer, and deep inside her, something ancient stirred. She didn't understand it yet, but she knew one thing for certain: that masked human had left her with more than a memory. He had given her something no one else in her world could hope, and that hope was now growing inside her, beating with a rhythm not of her kind. Her story, once a quiet tragedy, had just begun to rewrite history. Asterisk. The impossible seed surah's chambers were silent, but inside her a storm was rising. She sat before the mirror, fingers pressed lightly on her lower belly where the warmth had begun. It wasn't pain, not quite, but a strain. Pressure that pulsed in waves, steady and deep. She didn't need more tests to know the truth. She was pregnant, and in her entire species, not a single natural birth had been recorded in over 4 generations. Her people were sterile by fate, by accident of war and time, but now her body held something impossible. A child of 2 bloods. The palace healers had gone quiet after the results. Behind closed doors they argued with the elders, voices rising like smoke from a hidden fire. They called her condition unnatural, a breach of genetic law, a danger to their purity. To them, her body had committed a crime it could not have planned. But Surya did not feel fear. She felt alive. For the first time since she was told as a girl she would never bear a child, now her breath was fuller, her heartbeat stronger, and her dreams full of strain. Warmth. She knew she was changing, but not breaking. That night we summoned to the high hall. The walls there were carved with the history of her kind. Glory, war, and quiet extinction. At the center stood the council of gene memory. 13 elders with skin like marble and eyes like judgment. They offered her no seat, only questions. Who is the father? The eldest asked without emotion. Was it forced? Another added, their tone sharp with suspicion. Surya stood tall, her golden eyes unblinking, her hands resting on the small swell beneath her robe. I do not know his name, she answered calmly, but I do not regret it. The room fell cold. A silent signal passed among the elders, and the lead medic stepped forward with a metal case. Inside was a vial of glowing silver. Liquid termination serum. Your body has committed a biological error, the medic said. The child must be removed. Surya turned without a word and walked out of the chamber. Guards moved to block her, but froze when she raised one glowing hand. The power within her had grown fast, faster than anyone could explain. Something ancient was waking in her blood, and it made her dangerous outside. The palace, the city of crystal towers, buzzed with whispers. Some said the highborn girl had become cursed. Others said she was chosen, but one among them didn't care about whispers. A rebel healer named Vale, once cast out for studying forbidden biology, had been watching her. He found her near the edge of the upper sky bridge, robes fluttering in the wind like torn wings. I heard, he said quietly, and I believe. Your child is not a mistake. She turned, surprised he had come, but said nothing. Vale offered her his hand, and for a moment she hesitated, then took it. He led her to the old tunnels beneath the city, long abandoned since the surface wars there. In a hidden lab powered by old solar veins, he began his scans. His voice shook as he read the data. This isn't just a pregnancy, Surya, he whispered. It's a hybrid, and it's alive in ways I don't understand. The child's cells weren't rejecting either parent's DNA. They were merging them where her people's genes were locked and dying. The human DNA had sparked something new. Each scan revealed strange growth. Patterns, light signatures, and neural activity far beyond normal stages. It wasn't just life, it was evolution. You need to leave, Vale said, pacing the lab. They'll come for you again, and next time they won't use serum. Sarah touched the growing curve of her belly, feeling a soft kick for the first time. Won't run forever, she said, but I will protect this child. Vale nodded, then activated a hidden beacon on his wrist. Somewhere in the stars, an encrypted signal was sent. It found its way to a cloaked ship drifting between dead moons. Inside, a human stirred as the beacon blinked red. Kale read the message and froze. The coordinates pointed straight to her. He hadn't expected to hear from her again. He hadn't even known her name, but now he knew she was alive and carrying something born of both of them. He tightened his grip on the control stick and set a course toward the planet back. On Zaris, Sierra's glow grew stronger. Each hour, she no longer felt fear, only urgency. The child inside her was not just growing, it was calling, and soon its father would answer, hunted by her own. The snow on Zareth's outer rim turned red as the first blast struck the ground. Sura barely had time to shield herself before the cliff face exploded, sending rocks and ash into the frozen sky behind her. Vale dragged their emergency pack into a narrow ice tunnel, yelling for her to move. She didn't look back. She didn't have to. Her own people were hunting her now, not for answers, not for help, but for elimination. The council had declared her a biological threat, and under ancient law that meant she had to be silenced permanently. 3 armed crafts circled above, releasing drones that scanned the frozen valley for her heat signature. They were fast, cold, and without mercy. She stumbled as another contraction pulsed through her. Even though the birth was still weeks away, the child was reacting to the danger, and its energy surged into her bloodstream like fire. Vale activated the camouflage field as they reached the deep tunnel mouth. This will only hold for a few hours, he warned, sweat dripping from his brow. Saria clutched her belly and sat against the wall, breathing hard. The kick was stronger this time, not violent, but urgent, like the child was warning her. You have to go alone, she whispered. They'll track me through your signature too. Vale shook his head. No, he said, I won't abandon you, not when you're this close. A sudden beep on his wrist pad interrupted them. A signal, encrypted, human in origin, was closing in from orbit far above. Kale's ship had entered the outer atmosphere. Cloaked in stealth, he had followed the signal to this dead zone, unsure of what he would find. But when his sensors picked up the energy pulse from Sura's body, his chest tightened. It wasn't just a reading, it was familiar, alive and powerful. He set the ship down miles away near the ice ridge and began to hike in. His body had changed since Sarah, hardened from exile, sharper from guilt. He had walked away from her that night, thinking it was over. Now he knew he had started something far bigger than a mistake. Back in the ice tunnel, the camouflage failed. A beam of white-hot plasma melted the ice wall just feet from Sura's head. The drones had found them, and now the hunters followed. 3 figures in black armor entered, weapons humming low and deadly. Saria stood with effort and GT, one hand glowing with a strange energy that now lived inside her. She looked them in the eye and said one word. Leave. They raised their weapons. instead, and then the entire tunnel shook. As the back wall exploded inward, Cale stepped through the smoke, a rifle in one hand and fire in his eyes. He fired twice, hitting the drones clean through their cores. The hunters turned too slow to react. Cale moved like lightning, knocking one unconscious and disarming the second before they could fire. The third aimed at Saria. She didn't flinch. Instead, a pulse of golden light erupted from her chest, blasting the hunter backward into the ice wall. The body slid to the ground. Armor cracked. Cale stared at her, stunned. Oh, she was glowing now, faint but steady, her skin shimmering like sunlit water. Why, he began, then stopped. Alive, she finished with a tired smile. And so is our child. Cale dropped his weapon and crossed the space between them. For a moment they simply stood, letting silence speak where words failed. Then he reached out and touched her face. Her breath caught, not from pain but recognition. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. I had to, he answered. I had to see if you were real. Vale stepped forward, his eyes wide with disbelief. So you're the father, he said. You're human. Cale nodded slowly. In your DNA, Vale continued. It didn't break the child, it made it stronger. Cale looked at Sierra's belly, where a faint golden light now pulsed through her robe. He could feel it, even from here, the life he didn't know he had helped create. We have to get out of here, Cale said. There will be more coming. Sierra nodded. There's a vault north of the ridge of Vale, she said. It's ancient, older than the wars. Some say it holds answers, Vale added, and weapons, but most importantly, Sarah said, placing her hand over her stomach. It might hold safety. They left the shattered tunnel and disappeared into the white night. The wind howled behind them, carrying the scent of fire and smoke. But ahead, under the frozen stars, the child inside her kicked again. And for the first time it felt like the child wasn't just reacting, it was guiding them. Blood and breathing. The cold wind screamed across the Vale ridge as night fell, like a heavy curtain. Cale, Saria, and Vale pressed forward through the snowstorm, the world around them swallowed by ice and silence. The baby inside Saria was growing too fast now, her body glowing brighter with each passing hour. Every step became harder, but she didn't stop. Cale walked beside her, ready to carry her if she fell. His body ached from the last fight, but the fire in his chest burned stronger than pain. He could feel the child's energy through her, like a silent voice humming inside his bones. It wasn't human and it wasn't alien. It was something new. They reached a jagged rock wall half buried in frost. Vale placed his hand on a stone symbol and muttered ancient words. The wall groaned, cracked open, and revealed a narrow stairway leading into darkness. This is the Vault of Breath, Vale said. Built before our kind lost the sky. Inside, the walls were smooth and pulsing with old energy. Faint lights lit up as they passed, recognizing Saria's presence. The air was warmer, charged with power that tickled the skin like electricity. Cale kept his weapon ready. Saria stopped him. There's no danger here, she whispered. The vault knows me. She stepped forward and the lights grew brighter, responding to her heartbeat. Vale's scanner blinked and beeped wildly. The child is bonding with the environment, he said, stunned. Its breathing with the vault. At the center of the chamber stood a silver platform with a glowing cradle-like structure. Without hesitation, Saria stepped onto it and collapsed, her body trembling. Cale caught her just in time. lowering her gently into the cradle, her eyes fluttered open, glowing gold. I feel it, she whispered. It's not just energy, it's memory. The vault's systems came alive, screens lighting up with symbols and data older than her species. Images flashed of war, extinction, and a final genetic lock, placed to stop uncontrolled hybrids. They had done this to themselves. Saria's body began to shake, her skin burning with light. She's not dying. Vale gasped. She's merging. The child inside her wasn't waiting for birth. It was rewriting her cells now, making her the first of a new kind. Kale knelt beside her, holding her hand. He didn't speak, only breathe with her, each breath syncing with hers. For a moment the vault dimmed, then glowed brighter than before. Symbols aligned into a message spoken in a voice that wasn't human or alien. Blood joined, breath shared, life awakened. The vault said, "You are the first mother of unity." Saria opened her eyes, no longer just golden but flecked with human-colored deep hazel. Her body had stabilized, the energy now flowing gently instead of burning. She was no longer just of her kind. She's changed. Vale whispered. She's stable now, and so is the child. Kale looked down at her, and for the first time his voice cracked. "I thought I'd lost you," he said. "I thought that night was just a mistake." Sura smiled weakly. "It was never a mistake," she replied. "It was a beginning." The moment broke as alarms rang across the vault walls. Sensors flashed with red light. Enemy crafts were closing in. "They found us," Vale growled, pulling his pistol. "They must have tracked residual heat." Kale helped Saria stand, now stronger, glowing but steady. "I can fight," she said, surprising them both. The cradle had done more than stabilize. Hurt had awakened something inside her. Kale handed her a pulse blade, and she gripped it without fear. The vault's doors began to shake as external lasers cut into the rock. "We hold them off as long as we can," Kale said, "until the child is ready." Saria nodded. "And if we fall," she said calmly, "this vault must remain sealed." Vale activated a fail safe on the platform, the walls shifting into defensive mode. "Then let's make them regret ever chasing you," he replied. The doors exploded inward. Soldiers in black armor stormed in, but the vault responded faster. Defensive turrets powered by the child's energy came online. Blasts of golden plasma erupted, knocking the first wave backward. Kale and Saria fought side by side, moving like they had done it 1,000 times. The child inside her pulsed again, sending out a shock wave that froze enemy weapons in midair. Even Vale stumbled, overwhelmed by the power flowing through the chamber. "This isn't a fight anymore," he gasped. "This is something holy." As the attackers fell back, retreating under the vault's wrath, Kale realized something deeper. The child wasn't just defending its parents, it was thinking, choosing, breathing through both of them, and somewhere in its glowing heart, it knew the war was just beginning, but so was its purpose, because this child wasn't born of love or accident alone. It was born to change everything. The hidden sanctuary, the vault, had fallen silent, but the air inside still shimmered with power. Outside, enemy forces retreated into the storm, confused and shaken by the force they could not understand. Saria sat on the cold platform, her hands on her belly, the glow pulsing with slow, steady rhythm. The child inside her was quiet now, but not asleep. It was waiting, and in the stillness it was learning. Kale stood near the door with his rifle. Lowered, eyes sharp and heavy with thought, Vale paced beside the glowing walls, reading ancient data that flickered in alien language. This place wasn't just built for protection, he said, pointing to the stone symbols. Above them, it was a sanctuary built before the wars by ancestors who saw this coming. Kale looked over. You mean hybrid birth? Vale nodded, not feared. It was planned. Saria's skin tingled as the lights around her responded to her heartbeat. She could feel the vault listening, connected to her in a way no machine ever had before. It knows the child, she whispered. It remembers something. The walls pulsed gently as if to agree. Then the vault opened, a new chamber, hidden path revealed only by her presence. They followed the glowing corridor into a chamber full of floating orbs and long-dead statues. Each orb held memories, recorded lifetimes of an ancient race that had once ruled the stars, and at the center of them stood a great mirror made of living light. Sura stepped close and gasped as her reflection changed. It showed her as she was, but also as something more. Her body tall and crowned with fire, her child grown and standing beside her. Hand in hand, the vision spoke no words. But the message was clear. This was destiny. It's not an accident, not a mistake, but a return to something that had been stolen. From time, Vale fell to his knees, whispering prayers older than the council's laws. Kale stepped closer to Sharia and said quietly, "Then we protect this no matter what." Before she could reply, the vault doors pulsed red. Again something approached. This time it wasn't enemy ships. Sura narrowed her eyes and placed a hand on the floor panel. "It's not weapons," she said slowly. "It's her," the vault confirmed. It, with a glowing sigil on the wall, a royal crest, her family's mark, flickered in blood light. The queen had arrived, and she had come alone. Outside on the ice, a single figure stood against the storm, cloaked in silver, tall and unmoving, her crown glowing with cold light. She walked toward the vault, unguarded, unafraid, her eyes full of fire and sorrow. The doors opened, but the vault did not raise its weapons. Saria stepped forward to meet her. "Mother." They stared at each other for a long moment. No words passed, only breath and silence between them. Then the queen spoke, her voice soft but sharp like glass. "You broke our laws," she said. "I broke a curse," Saria answered. The queen's eyes dropped to her glowing belly. "That thing will change everything," she whispered. "We are not ready." "Then let it change us," Saria said, stepping closer. Kale and Vale stood at her side, watching as tension filled the air. But the queen did not draw a weapon. Instead, she removed her crown and placed it at her feet. "I came to end you," she said. "But when I saw you through the vault's eyes, I remembered." "What?" Syria asked, her voice shaking. "That we were meant to evolve," the queen answered. "We locked our blood out of fear, not wisdom." Tears ran down her cheeks, quickly freezing in the cold air. The queen looked at Kale and did not blink. "You gave her something we thought lost forever," she said, "and now I must choose: protect my throne or protect my daughter's future." Kale didn't answer, but Saria stepped forward and held her mother's hands. "Don't choose for the past," she said. "Choose for what's growing inside me." The vault lit up once more, this time with warmth and gold. It had accepted the queen's surrender. A new sanctuary was being formed, not in stone but in blood and choice, and in the center of it all was a child not yet born. That night, under The roof of an ancient machine. Something greater than peace was born. The queen remained in the vault, swearing herself to secrecy and to protection. The child would be hidden, raised in silence, watched over by both alien wisdom and human heart, but far beyond the ice, the stars began to whisper. Other eyes had seen the light. Other empires had felt the pulse of change, and in dark rooms across distant systems, leaders began to prepare for war because something had been awakened. That should not have been possible, and it was still growing. War of the bloodlines. A newborn heartbeat echoed through the ancient vault like a drum of fate, soft at first, then louder, steady and impossible to ignore. Child had not been born yet, but its presence was no longer hidden. It had awakened something across the stars, and now the galaxy was stirring. Saria stood barefoot at the center of the cradle chamber, her eyes closed. Her hands glowed with golden light as she breathed with the child inside her. Every breath she took echoed through the ancient walls. The vault responded like a living being, its systems aligning to her pulse. Kale watched her quietly, weapon still strapped across his back. His muscles were tense, his thoughts louder than the silence around him. It had been quiet for too long. That silence meant war was coming. Vale worked beside the central console, sweat dripping down his face as he decrypted the final layer of ancient code. He turned with a gasp. I know what the vault is, he said, voice shaking. It's not just a sanctuary, he continued. It's a signal tower beacon. Sura opened her eyes. Then who did it call? Even before he could answer, the walls lit with red warning lights. The vault trembled as sensors picked up massive gravitational shifts. Not one ship, not two, but an entire fleet. And they weren't her people's vessels. These were outsiders, scavengers of power, jealous watchers who had long feared the old prophecies. The hybrid child had been a myth to them, a forbidden hope lost a time. Now it was real, and they had come to erase it. Kale stepped forward, tightening his armor straps. We fight, he said, eyes locked on the display. Saria's hand touched her belly as the child pulsed again. No, she said softly, we survive. The queen entered the chamber, armored in royal steel, her eyes hard and cold. They have no right, she growled, but they come anyway. She lifted an ancient blade, passed down through bloodlines. For centuries we feared this child, she said. Now I see it was fear of becoming more. Sura nodded. Then let us become more. The vault roof opened with a thunderous groan, revealing the storm. Above, a single ray of light struck Saria, and the energy from the child flowed through her like fire. The sky itself shimmered as the vault amplified that signal outward all over the galaxy. Those tuned to old frequencies heard one thing: hope. But hope is dangerous when power is at stake. The enemy fleet moved into position, ready to strike. At their lead was a warlord known only as Varak, a creature bred in darkness and fed by fear. He watched the vault through his ship's display, eyes narrowing at the golden pulse. Fire on my mark, he said coldly. Inside the vault, Saria stood taller, her body shining like the stars themselves. The child's heartbeat synced with hers. Suddenly every system in the vault connected: energy, shields, weapons, memory, life. Kale, Vale, and the queen took their positions. This wasn't just a fight for the child, it was a battle for what the galaxy would become. Machine walls shifted, ancient weapons powered by living energy came Online, the fleet fired its first volley, and the vault caught it midair, deflecting the blast into the mountain. Side, Vorik roared and launched a second wave, this time faster, sharper, lethal. But the vault pushed back from within. The cradle, the unborn child reached outward, not with limbs but with thud. Cale dropped to his knees as his mind filled with images. He saw stars birthing planets, species rising and falling, war and peace entangled. Like vines, the child showed him everything, and then, just for a second, he saw its face, curious and full of love. Syria cried out as the light grew unbearable. The vault lifted her into the air, cradling her like a mother. The child was coming not by force but by will. It had chosen to be born now in the middle of war as a symbol that could not be destroyed. The vault sent out one final wave of pulsive golden light that spread through the sky like fire through dry leaves. Vorik's ships lost power, their weapons frozen in place, their engines stilled. The warlord screamed, but even his voice was lost to the silence. No one had fired a single fatal shot, yet the battle was over. The queen dropped her sword, falling to her knees. In awe, Cale rushed to Shura as she descended, her body weak but alive. In her arms, something small and glowing moved. The child had been born silent, without a scream, but the world had already heard it, and so the war ended. Not with death, but with breath. The child blinked once and opened golden eyes that shimmered with the truth of both species. Shura held it close, her voice soft. You are the bridge. Cale placed his hand over hers and said, and we will protect you until our last breath. The birth of tomorrow. The vault doors closed behind them, sealing the last crack of light from the outside world. Inside, everything had gone still, not from fear or defeat, but from awe, for the child had been born and the universe was already changing. Shura sat on a soft platform of living stone, the newborn in her arms wrapped in glowing silk woven by the vault itself. The baby did not cry, it only looked, watched, and blinked with golden eyes filled with quiet understanding, as if it already knew the weight of what it was. Cale stood behind her, hand on her shoulder, eyes locked on the child. He still could not speak. No training, no battlefield, no science had ever prepared him for this, to see life born between two worlds and yet belonging fully to neither. Vale scanned the child once more, shaking his head with a breathless laugh. Her DNA stable, he said, stronger than any recorded before. She's not just healthy, he added. She's perfect. Seer looked down at the child and smiled gently. She whispered she chose to come in peace. The queen stood quietly nearby, armor removed, crown gone. Her eyes were wet, but her back was straight. I feared this child would end us, she said, but now I see she may save us instead. The vault pulsed in slow golden waves, echoing the baby's heartbeat. The weapons had shut down, and in their place, gardens bloomed from cracks in the stone. The air was sweeter, the walls warmer, the entire place alive, like a new world just starting. The vault had shifted from sanctuary to cradle, but far above the ice and mountain crossed the stars. Things were not still. The pulse of the child's birth had been felt by watchers, by enemies, by species who had long turned their backs on hope. And now they were listening again. Some feared it, some called it a threat, but others whispered ancient names that hadn't been spoken in centuries, names that meant prophecy, rebirth, and balance. In hidden chambers across the galaxy. Leaders gathered in silence. The era of sterile empires was ending because something had been born that could not be repeated by machines, science, or clones, only by union, trust, and something even older than time, instinct. Back in the vault, the child reached for Kale with one tiny hand. He knelt and let her touch his cheek, and in that moment he felt something deep and unspoken pass through his mind, not words but images of stars yet unborn, forests untouched, and skies filled with laughter. She showed me the future, he said softly. Sura nodded. She's not just a child, she whispered. She's beginning. The queen turned and faced the stone mirror one last time. Its reflection had changed. It no longer showed Saria or Kale alone. Now it showed the child walking between two great towers, one human, one alien. Behind her, both races stood side by side, not as rulers and rebels, but as equals. The queen bowed her head and whispered, "Let it be so." The next day, the vault opened, no longer hidden, no longer afraid. A message was sent out across the stars, not a threat, not even a warning, but a declaration. The child of two worlds had been born. She was safe, she was protected, and she would one day rise, not to rule, but to unite. Sura and Kale stood at the highest peak, their child in their arms. The wind carried the sound of her soft breathing far into the sky, and something in the stars answered back. An old star lit up for the first time in 1,000 years, a sign that the universe had accepted her, or maybe just a quiet nod from fate itself. Below, the world began to stir with whispers of change. In every corner of the galaxy, people spoke her name, though she had no name yet. They called her the bridge, the living flame, the blood of both sons. But to Kale and Saria, she was simply their daughter, born of one night behind a mask, born from a moment no one had planned, and yet powerful enough to change everything forever. As the stars turned and the vault returned to quiet, the child blinked once more, then smiled, and the future opened its arms to welcome her. The end.